The desert highway stretched endlessly as Mark Davis spotted motorcycles gaining in his mirror. The leather-clad riders surrounded his 18-wheeler, their engines growling like predators as they forced him onto the shoulder. With nowhere to run, Mark reluctantly opened his door and climbed down to face the gang of sneering bikers. The leader's threatening smile vanished the moment Mark removed his cap. The desert highway stretched endlessly before Mark Davis as he guided his 18-wheeler through the Nevada wasteland. After 15 years on the road, the 42-year-old trucker had developed a sixth sense for trouble. It was that instinct that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up now as he checked his side mirrors. In the distance behind him, Mark spotted several motorcycles gaining ground, their engines cutting through the quiet afternoon. Something about their formation and speed told him this wasn't just fellow travelers sharing the road. Mark gripped the steering wheel tightly as he watched the riders draw closer, his knuckles turning white. They wore matching leather vests with skull patches emblazoned across the back, the Desert Scorpions. Mark's stomach tightened. Local truckers had warned about this group at the last stopover. They are known on that route for particularly targeting truck drivers, whom they viewed as easy prey. 3 days ago, a driver had arrived at the truck stop with a broken nose and an empty wallet, courtesy of this same gang. The bikers skillfully maneuvered into a tight formation around his truck, effectively boxing him in. One particularly bold rider with a red bandana pulled alongside Mark's window, making aggressive hand gestures, clearly signaling for him to pull over. The man's face was partially hidden behind mirrored sunglasses, but his scowl was unmistakable. Another biker with a shaved head swerved dangerously close to his front bumper, trying to intimidate him. A third cut sharply in front of the truck, forcing Mark to tap his brakes. Mark assessed his situation quickly. Out here, help was at least 30 minutes away if he managed to call for it. The nearest highway patrol was stationed miles back, and the next truck stop was too far ahead. With a resigned sigh, he signaled and carefully guided his 18-wheeler onto the shoulder of the road. The motorcycle engines revved threateningly as the bikers surrounded the now stationary truck, the sound echoing off the rock formations that lined the highway. Dust swirled around them in the desert air. Their leader, a burly man with a thick beard and tattoos covering his arms, dismounted with a swagger that spoke of someone accustomed to being feared. He spat on the ground before marching toward the driver's side door. The other gang members spread out, circling the truck like vultures, some laughing, others maintaining a menacing silence as they established a perimeter. Through the window, Mark could hear the leader shouting accusations about being cut off miles back. Mark knew it wasn't true. He always drove carefully and respectfully shared the road, but truth rarely mattered in confrontations like these. These men weren't looking for justice. They were looking for trouble. One biker began filming with his phone while another examined the cargo locks on the trailer. Mark spotted this in his mirrors and he switched on his dash cam to record whatever was about to happen. Taking a deep breath, Mark unlocked his door. The stairs down from the cab felt like a descent into the unknown. As his boots hit the asphalt, the bikers tightened their circle. Mark stood with his hands clearly visible and his trucker cap pulled low over his eyes. Mark explained calmly that there had been a misunderstanding. He assured them he hadn't cut anyone off, but if they felt he had, he sincerely apologized. The leader's response was a harsh laugh that echoed off the desert rocks. He shoved Mark against the side of the truck, the impact knocking the wind from his lungs. The leader sneered that an apology wouldn't be enough. They were thinking maybe a toll was in order for using their road. The other bikers snickered as they closed the circle tighter. One grabbed Mark's arm with a painful grip that would surely leave bruises. Another pushed him roughly from behind, nearly causing him to stumble. When the leader reached for Mark's wallet pocket, something subtle shifted in the trucker's demeanor. Mark's posture changed almost imperceptibly. His breathing slowed, and his eyes, still shadowed by his cap, scanned the group with calculated precision. In a voice suddenly different, calmer, more measured, almost professional, he gave them one last chance. He told them to back away, get on their bikes, and everyone could go home without trouble. The leader responded with a harder shove and a mocking laugh. He questioned who was going to make them leave. Surely not this lone trucker. The atmosphere around them tensed like a coiled spring. The desert wind seemed to hold its breath. What happened next occurred so quickly that none of the bikers had time to react or even fully comprehend what they were seeing. The leader made another threatening move toward Mark, but this time his aggression was met with a precise counterhold. Before anyone could blink, the burly biker was face down on the asphalt, arm twisted behind him at an angle that human limbs weren't meant to achieve. The biker who had grabbed Mark's arm was next. A sweeping move took his legs out from under him with surgical precision. Both men lay on the ground, groaning in pain and shock as their brains tried to process how quickly the tables had turned. Only then did Mark remove his cap, wiping sweat from his brow and revealing his face fully in the fading sunlight. His features, partially hidden before, were now unmistakable to anyone who had followed professional boxing a decade ago. One of the remaining bikers gasped audibly as recognition dawned on his face. He stammered in disbelief, backing away and informing the others that this was Mark "The Hammer" Davis, the heavyweight champion from 2010 to 2013. The remaining bikers froze in shock, their earlier bravado evaporating into the desert air. Their leader, a man who'd built his reputation on never backing down from anyone, was struggling to get to his feet, pride wounded more severely than his body. The other fallen biker was clutching his wrist, his eyes wide with the realization of who had put him there. One of them nervously explained that they didn't know who he was, insisting this was all a mistake. The biker who had been filming had lowered his phone, the recording forgotten in the shock of recognition. Mark calmly pointed out that video evidence went both ways. He had 5 men threatening him, one recorded on his dash cam. They had evidence of what happens when that one defends himself. He suggested neither recording would reflect well on the Desert Scorpions if seen by authorities. The leader looked up at Mark with newfound terror in his eyes, stammering out an apology that sounded hollow even to his own ears. Mark stood over him, not with aggression, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was capable of. Mark gave them 3 minutes to get out of his sight. They scrambled to their motorcycles, the earlier predatory formation now completely forgotten. Within seconds, they roared away, leaving only dust clouds and wounded pride behind them. Mark watched until they disappeared over the horizon before climbing back into his truck. He sat for a moment, hands slightly trembling now that the adrenaline was subsiding. He sat still for a moment to calm himself down before continuing his journey. 2 weeks later, at a truck stop 3 states away, Mark overheard drivers talking about a strange change in behavior from the Desert Scorpions. No one had been harassed in weeks, a welcome but puzzling development for the regular drivers on that road. Mark just smiled to himself as he paid for his coffee and headed back to his truck. Some lessons, it seemed, finally stuck. The desert highway would be a little safer for everyone now. Have you ever been in a situation where you were underestimated, only to surprise everyone with an unexpected skill?